many kinds of death.
28 Day Later and sequel 28 Weeks Later movie explored. When a mysterious virus called Rage devastates the UK, civilization collapses overnight. 28 Days Later follows a lone survivor waking in an empty London, struggling to make sense of a world overrun by infected maniacs. But survival isn't the end, because 28 Weeks Later shows us the chilling consequences of trying to rebuild after the nightmare. These two intense horror films don't just reinvent the zombie genre. They ask what's more dangerous, the virus or humanity itself. 28 Days Later, 2002. 28 Days Later, directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Garland, is a landmark British post-apocalyptic horror film that redefined zombie cinema for a new generation. The film begins with a grim sequence in a laboratory where a group of animal rights activists break into a research facility to free chimpanzees being subjected to cruel experiments. A scientist tries to stop them, warning that the animals are infected with a highly contagious virus known as Rage. The activists ignore his pleas, release a chimpanzee, and immediately suffer the horrifying consequences as the animal attacks and spreads the virus. Within moments, the Rage virus begins to consume the UK. The film then cuts to 28 Days Later, where we are introduced to the protagonist, Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, a bicycle courier who wakes up alone in a deserted London hospital. Disoriented and unaware of the apocalyptic events that have occurred, Jim wanders through the hauntingly empty streets of London. Iconic scenes of desolation follow. Landmarks like Westminster Bridge and Piccadilly Circus are eerily abandoned, littered with overturned cars and debris. Jim finally finds evidence of human presence, but not in the way he hopes. While exploring a church, he is attacked by frenzied, bloodthirsty infected people and is rescued at the last moment by two survivors, Selena, Naomi Harris, and Mark, Noah Huntley, who explained to him that a viral outbreak has turned most of the population into rage-filled, zombie-like monsters. Selena and Mark take Jim to a safe house and inform him about the rapid collapse of society. The Rage virus, which spreads through blood or saliva, acts in seconds and turns its victims into homicidal maniacs. The military and government collapsed within days, and now only a few scattered survivors remain. Jim, devastated to learn that his parents have likely died, convinces the group to visit his home. There, they discover that Jim's parents committed suicide together, leaving a note that reads, "With endless love, we left you sleeping." That night, the house is attacked by infected, and Mark is bitten during the scuffle. Without hesitation, Selena kills him to prevent his transformation, showing Jim the harsh reality of survival in this new world. The next day, while exploring the area, Jim and Selena spot Christmas lights blinking in the distance. Investigating further, they meet Frank, Brendan Gleeson, a kind-hearted taxi driver, and his teenage daughter Hannah, Megan Burns, who are surviving in a barricaded apartment complex. Though resourceful, Frank is running out of water and options. He shows them a radio broadcast from a military group claiming to offer safety and the answer to infection at a location near Manchester. Desperate for a future, the four survivors decide to risk the journey. They set off in Frank's black cab, navigating abandoned highways, infected-infested tunnels, and moments of both terror and bonding. Along the way, the group begins to form a surrogate family. Jim becomes more hardened and confident, Selena gradually opens up emotionally, and Hannah starts to feel a sense of safety with these new companions. However, tragedy strikes just as the group arrives in Manchester. While inspecting a tall iron gate near a checkpoint, a drop of infected blood from a corpse above falls directly into Frank's eye, instantly infecting him. Frank realizes what has happened and, heartbreakingly, tries to warn the others to keep their distance. Before the infection can fully consume him, a squad of soldiers appears from hiding and shoots him dead. The remaining three, Jim, Selena, and Hannah, are taken by the soldiers to a heavily fortified country mansion under the command of Major Henry West, Christopher Eccleston. At first, the soldiers treat their new guests with hospitality, offering food, warm beds, and a tour of their defenses. West appears calm and composed, presenting himself as someone working toward rebuilding a future. However, it soon becomes apparent that things are not what they seem. Jim grows suspicious after witnessing the erratic behavior of the soldiers, who treat Hannah and Selena with thinly veiled lechery. His fears are confirmed when West confides in him privately, revealing that the radio broadcast was a lure to bring women to the mansion. West intends to use them to repopulate the world, starting by forcing them into sexual slavery to keep his men from losing morale and control. Jim is horrified and refuses to comply. Sergeant Farrell, Stuart McQuarrie, one of the more level-headed soldiers, also condemns the plan. West, seeing dissent, orders both men to be executed. Farrell and Jim are taken to the woods by two soldiers to be shot, but internal tensions boil over. One of the soldiers, clearly disturbed by the orders, hesitates long enough for Jim to escape into the woods. Farrell is executed. Jim, now alone and hunted, takes refuge in the forest and spots a jet contrail high in the sky, proof that the rest of the world may still be functioning and that England has likely been quarantined. Inspired by the sight, Jim resolves to rescue Selena and Hannah. Using guerrilla tactics, he lures some of the soldiers away from the mansion with a blaring siren. He then returns and breaks into the estate to cause chaos. In a key move, Jim releases Private Mailer, a soldier who had been infected and kept chained for observation, unleashing the infected man upon the other soldiers. As the compound descends into chaos, several soldiers are killed by Mailer or by Jim himself, who now fights with brutal efficiency. In the chaos, Selena is nearly assaulted by Corporal Mitchell, one of the more sadistic soldiers. Jim arrives just in time and kills Mitchell with such ferocity that Selena hesitates, fearing Jim may be infected himself. When he does not attack her, she realizes he's still human and kisses him in relief. Together with Hannah, they attempt to flee the mansion using Frank's cab once more. Just as they're escaping, Major West reappears, hiding in the back seat. He shoots Jim in the stomach, critically wounding him. Acting quickly, Hannah puts the cab in reverse and crashes it through the gates. As West tries to escape through the back window, he is seized by the now-freed Mailer and killed. Hannah drives away, and the three survivors flee into the countryside. The film then jumps forward to another, 28 days later. Jim, having survived his gunshot wound, is recovering at a quiet, isolated cottage in the Lake District of Cumbria. The infected are shown lying lifeless on empty roads, having started to starve to death now that no uninfected humans remain to hunt. Selena stitches a large cloth banner that spells out "Hello" and lays it out on a field to be visible from the air. As a Hawker Hunter jet flies overhead, the three survivors run out and wave, hoping to be rescued. They wonder aloud if the pilot has seen them, hinting at a faint glimmer of hope amid the bleakness. The film ends with a suggestion that the nightmare might finally be over, and that the world beyond Britain might still be intact. 28 weeks later, 2007. 28 weeks later, the sequel to Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later expands the world of the rage virus outbreak and explores the consequences of trying to rebuild civilization after a devastating pandemic. Directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, the film begins with a harrowing flashback that sets the tone for the horrors to come. The story opens during the initial outbreak of the rage virus. A group of survivors is hiding in a rural cottage outside London, including Don, Robert Carlyle, and his wife, Alice, Catherine McCormick. One evening, a terrified child bangs on their door, begging for help. Despite the risks, they let him in, only to have infected people soon follow. In the ensuing chaos, Dawn abandons Alice and escapes, leaving her to be seemingly torn apart. Dawn manages to flee across a field and board a boat, escaping the carnage as the countryside burns. The film then jumps ahead to 28 weeks after the initial outbreak. By this time, the infected have died of starvation, and Britain has been declared safe for repopulation. Under NATO and US military control, a section of London has been designated a safe zone called the Green Zone. The military, led by Brigadier General Stone, Idris Elba, is in charge of maintaining security, while civilians slowly begin returning to their homeland. Don is now living in the Green Zone, working in maintenance. He is reunited with his two children, 12-year-old Andy, Macintosh Muggleton, and teenage Tammy, Imogen Poots, who had been evacuated to Spain during the outbreak. Don lies to them about their mother's death, claiming he was unable to save her despite trying. Soon, the children sneak out of the Green Zone and return to their old home in the quarantined area. There, To their shock, they find Alice alive. She is infected with the rage virus, but shows no symptoms. She is an asymptomatic carrier. The children are taken back, and Alice is placed under medical observation by Major Scarlett Levy, Rose Byrne, a compassionate military doctor who realizes the grave danger Alice poses. Scarlett wants Alice quarantined indefinitely, as her blood may hold the key to a cure or to catastrophic reinfection. However, Don, filled with guilt and longing, sneaks into the medical bay to see Alice. In a heartbreaking and terrifying moment, he kisses her, only to be infected by the virus she carries. Within seconds, Don becomes a bloodthirsty killer, murders Alice, and begins a second wave of infection inside the secure zone. The virus spreads rapidly. The military fails to contain the outbreak. General Stone initiates Code Red. Quarantine is abandoned in favor of total extermination. Soldiers are ordered to shoot any civilian on sight, whether infected or not. Panic sets in as survivors scatter. A sniper named Sergeant Doyle, Jeremy Renner, disillusioned by the command to fire on uninfected civilians, abandons his post to help Scarlett, Tammy, and Andy escape. Believing Andy's unique genetic resistance may be humanity's last hope, Scarlett protects him at all costs. The trio flees through a devastated London, trying to stay ahead of both the infected and the US military, which begins using firebombs, gunships, and flamethrowers to purge the area. The group eventually finds an abandoned car. As they attempt to escape, it fails to start. Soldiers with flamethrowers approach, and Doyle heroically sacrifices himself by getting out and push-starting the car. He succeeds, but is burned alive in the process. Scarlett and the children drive away, barely surviving another bombing run. They take refuge in the dark tunnels of the London Underground. Using the night vision scope on a rifle, they navigate the pitch-black corridors, but Don, still infected, ambushes them in the shadows. He brutally kills Scarlett and bites Andy before Tammy manages to shoot him dead. Andy, now partially infected like his mother, becomes another asymptomatic carrier, immune to the virus's effects but still capable of spreading it. Tammy, traumatized but resolute, guides her younger brother to the arranged rendezvous point at Wembley Stadium. There, they find the helicopter pilot Flynn, Harold Perrineau, a reluctant ally of Doyle who had promised to evacuate them. Despite the chaos, Flynn keeps his word and flies the two children out of London. The film ends ominously, flashing forward to another. 28 days later, Flynn's helicopter is now abandoned, and through its radio, a panicked French voice pleads for help. A new group of infected people is shown emerging from a Paris metro station near the Eiffel Tower, revealing that the virus has now spread to mainland Europe. 28 weeks later closes with the chilling realization that the virus is no longer contained. The hope for recovery was brief, and the nightmare is far from over. Final thoughts. From deserted London streets to a burning countryside, and finally the virus spreading across Europe. 28 days later and 28 weeks later show how quickly the world can fall, and how hard it is to rebuild. The horror doesn't end when the outbreak does, and the real terror may be in what comes next. If these films teach us anything, it's this: survival is only the beginning.